Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim, dear listener. Every single day you wake up, step onto the ground, look at the sky, and move through a world that feels completely normal. The alard beneath your feet feels stable, the sky above you feels endless, and everything around you seems as if it has always been there. But have you ever truly paused, even for a moment, and asked yourself a simple but powerful question? How did all of this begin? Not just in a casual way, not as a passing thought, but deeply, seriously, and honestly, because the truth is, most people never do. They live their entire lives surrounded by creation, yet rarely reflect on the Creator. They see the mountains, but don't question how they were placed. They see the sky, but don't wonder how it was raised. They see the balance in everything, yet they don't stop to think about who designed that balance so perfectly. And this is where something important begins to unfold. Because when you stop asking these questions, you start accepting everything as ordinary. What should fill you with awe becomes routine. What should make you reflect becomes invisible. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to live in a world full of signs, but without truly seeing them. Now think about this carefully. You live on a planet that floats in space, surrounded by a universe so vast that your mind cannot fully comprehend it. There are stars, galaxies, systems, and distances so great that even numbers begin to lose meaning. Yet despite all of this, everything operates in order. The sun rises and sets with precision. The earth rotates without fail. Life exists in perfect balance, and you are here, part of it all. Does that really sound like something random? Or does it point to something far more deliberate, far more controlled, and far more meaningful? Because the more you reflect, the harder it becomes to ignore the haqiqah that this cannot be an accident. Order does not come from chaos without purpose. Precision does not appear without design. And existence itself does not begin without a cause. But here is the deeper question. Even if you accept that everything was created, do you truly understand how it was created? Because knowing that something has a beginning is one thing, but understanding that beginning is something else entirely. And this is where many people stop. They accept that Allah created everything, but they never go further. They never explore what that actually means, how it happened, or why it was done in a specific way. And when you don't go deeper, your understanding remains surface level. It becomes something you believe, but not something you feel, something you accept, but not something that transforms the way you think. And this is why reflection is so important, because without it, even the greatest truths can feel distant. The Qur'an does not present creation as just information. It presents it as something to think about, something to reflect on, something that should change the way you see yourself and the world around you. It constantly invites you to look, to question, to understand, not because Allah needs you to know, but because you need to realize. Now pause again and bring this back to yourself. You are part of this creation. You are living within it, benefiting from it, and depending on it every single moment. The air you breathe, the alard you walk on, the sky that protects you, none of it exists by chance. And yet how often do you truly think about it? Because once you begin to think about it, something starts to shift. The world no longer feels ordinary. It begins to feel intentional, designed, controlled. And that realization leads to something even deeper. If everything around you was created with purpose, then what about you? And this is where the journey truly begins. Not with the universe, not with the earth, but with a question that turns inward. Because understanding creation is not just about knowing how everything started. It is about realizing what it means for your existence right now. And as you begin to explore that, you will come across something that has been mentioned clearly, yet often misunderstood. The idea that everything was created in 6 days. But what does that really mean? And is it as simple as it sounds? When you hear the phrase that Allah created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, it sounds simple at first, almost straightforward. 6 days, something you are already familiar with. You think of time the way you experience it, sunrise to sunset, one day after another, measured and predictable. But here is where the understanding begins to shift, because what you are imagining may not be what it actually means. The moment you try to apply human time to divine action, you limit something that is far beyond limitation. Because time itself is part of creation, it did not exist before Allah created it. So how can the one who created time be bound by it? This is the first realization that changes everything. Allah is not restricted by days, hours, or any measure that you use. What you call a day is only meaningful within the system that He created for you. Now think about this carefully. A single day for you is defined by the rotation of the earth. Without the earth, without the sun, without that entire system, your concept of a day would not exist. So when the Qur'an speaks about 6 days, it is not necessarily referring to the same type of day you experience. It is pointing towards stages, periods, or phases of creation, each one unfolding according to divine wisdom. This is where the contrast becomes clear. On one side, you have human understanding of time, limited, structured, and dependent on physical systems. On the other side, you have divine action, which is not bound by those systems at all. And when you try to force one into the framework of the other, confusion begins to appear. But the Qur'an does not create confusion. It invites reflection. It gives you enough to understand the reality without overwhelming you with details that your mind cannot fully grasp. It tells you that creation happened in 6 days, not to restrict your understanding, but to guide it, to help you realize that creation was not random, not chaotic, but deliberate and structured. And this is important, because if everything was created instantly without any sequence, you might overlook the order behind it. You might fail to see the precision, the mrahl, the careful unfolding of existence. But by describing creation in stages, the Qur'an directs your attention to the process itself. It encourages you to think about how everything was brought into existence step by step, with purpose and balance. Now pause and reflect again. Why would Allah, who has the power to create everything in an instant, choose to create in stages? This question is not about ability. It is about wisdom, because Allah does not act out of necessity. He acts with purpose. And every detail mentioned in the Qur'an carries meaning, even if you do not fully understand it immediately. One of the wisdom scholars often mention is that this teaches you about order and planning. It shows you that even though Allah can do everything instantly, creation itself follows a system. And this reflects something you see in your own life. Things develop over time. Growth happens in stages. Change unfolds gradually. This is not weakness. This is design. And there is another layer to this understanding. When you realize that time itself is created, it changes how you see your own life. You begin to understand that your urgency, your delays, your expectations are all tied to a system that Allah controls completely. What feels long to you may be nothing in the scale of divine time, and what feels short may carry more significance than you realize. So the concept of 6 days is not just about creation, it is about perspective. It is about breaking the limits of how you understand time and recognizing that Allah operates beyond those limits. And once you begin to see that, it opens the door to a deeper level of awareness, because now you're not just asking how long creation took, you're asking what existed before it. What was there when there was no time, no space, no universe, no earth, nothing at all except Allah? And this is where the story moves into a place that is far more profound, a place where your mind begins to step into the reality of absolute nothingness and the existence of the one who has always been there. Before the earth, before the sky, before the stars that fill the universe with light, there was a reality that is difficult for the human mind to fully grasp, a reality where nothing existed except Allah. No time, no space, no direction, no sound, no movement. Absolute nothingness in every sense that you understand. And within that nothingness, Allah existed, complete, perfect, and independent, just as He has always been. This is not something your mind is naturally comfortable with, because everything you have ever known is tied to existence. You understand things by seeing them, touching them, measuring them. Even when you imagine emptiness, you are still imagining it within space. But this was different. There was no space to imagine, no time to measure, no universe to contain anything. Only Allah, with His power, His knowledge, and His will. Now pause and let that sink in for a moment. Everything you see today, everything that feels permanent, everything that seems vast and endless, all of it did not exist, not even in the smallest form. The yard you walk on, the sky above you, the body you live in, all of it came into existence after a moment when there was nothing at all. And that moment itself is beyond your understanding because it existed outside of time. This is where the contrast becomes overwhelming. On one side, absolute nothingness. On the other side, the existence of everything you know today. And between these two, there is only one explanation, the will of Allah. Because nothing cannot create something. Emptiness cannot produce existence. There must be a source, a creator, a cause that is not dependent on anything else, and that is Allah. The Qur'an does not describe this beginning in a way that confuses you. It brings your attention to the reality that everything was created by Allah, without partners, without assistance, and without any limitation. He did not need materials. He did not need time. He did not need anything. When He wills something, He simply says, "Be," and it comes into existence. This is not a process like human creation. It is not gradual in the sense of effort. It is a command that brings reality into existence. But here is something important to understand. Even though Allah has the power to create instantly, He chose to create the universe in stages. Not because He needed time, but because there is wisdom in how things unfold. And that wisdom is something you begin to see when you reflect on creation itself. Nothing around you appears without order. Everything has a sequence, a balance, a structure that points toward intention. Now think about the moment creation began, the first act of bringing something into existence from absolute nothingness. This is not just a physical event. It is a demonstration of power beyond comprehension. Because every other form of creation you know involves using something that already exists. Humans build, design, and shape, but they do not create from nothing. Only Allah has that ability. And this realization changes the way you see everything. Because once you understand that your entire existence began from nothing, you begin to see how dependent you truly are. You are not self-sustaining. You are not independent. Every moment of your life is connected to the one who brought you into existence in the first place. This is why the Qur'an constantly reminds you to reflect on creation, not just to admire it, but to understand your place within it. Because when you forget where everything began, you start to feel as if things have always been this way. You lose the sense of al-bidayah, the awareness that everything you know is the result of a deliberate act of creation. And when that awareness fades, something else fades with it. Gratitude, humility, recognition of who you truly depend on. But when you bring that awareness back, everything changes. The world no longer feels random. Your existence no longer feels ordinary. It becomes something meaningful, something intentional, something that points back to Allah. Now, as you stand at this point of understanding, another question begins to form. If everything began from nothing, how did it take shape? How did the heavens rise? How was the earth formed? How did everything move from non-existence to the structured universe you see today? Because the beginning is only part of the story. What comes next? reveals not just power, but precision. And that is where the creation of the heavens and the earth begins to unfold in a way that shows you something even more remarkable. After the moment of absolute beginning, when nothing existed except Allah and creation was brought into existence by His will, the next part of the story unfolds in a way that reveals not just power, but extraordinary precision. Because the universe did not appear as a complete, finished system all at once. It was shaped, arranged, and balanced in stages, each part placed exactly where it needed to be, with purpose and order. The Qur'an draws attention to this process in a way that invites reflection. It speaks about the heavens and the earth being created, about the sky being raised, and about everything being set in balance. These are not random descriptions. They are deliberate reminders that what you see around you is not chaotic. It is structured. It follows a system that reflects perfect design. Now imagine this carefully. A universe that stretches beyond what you can comprehend, yet every part of it is functioning in harmony. The sky above you is not collapsing. The earth beneath you is not unstable. The Shams rises and sets with consistency. The stars remain in their paths. Everything operates within limits that are never crossed. This is not something that happens by chance. This is control at a level that no human mind can replicate. This is where the contrast becomes clear again. On one side, you have the idea of randomness, where things happen without purpose, without direction, without meaning. On the other side, you have a universe where everything is measured, everything is placed, and everything serves a function. The Qur'an repeatedly points to this balance as a sign, something meant to be noticed, something meant to make you think. And then there is the earth itself, the place where you live, walk, and build your life. It was not just created and left as it is. It was prepared. The land was spread out. The mountains were placed. The provisions were set within it. Everything you need to survive and live was already accounted for. Food, water, al-hawa, stability. All of it exists in a way that supports life perfectly. Now pause and reflect on this. Out of an entire universe with countless possibilities, you exist on a planet that is perfectly suited for your existence. Not slightly suitable, not barely functional, but precisely balanced. If even small aspects were different, life as you know it would not exist. This level of precision is not accidental. It is intentional. But what makes this even more remarkable is the order in which things were created. The heavens and the earth were not formed in confusion. There was tartib, a sequence that reflects wisdom. Each stage builds upon the next, creating a system that is interconnected. The sky protects the earth supports life, the systems within it maintain balance. Everything is linked in a way that shows coordination, not randomness. And yet, despite all of this, many people look at the world and see it as something ordinary. They wake up, go about their day, and never stop to think about the reality they are living in. The sky becomes just the sky. The earth becomes just the ground. The balance becomes invisible, and when something becomes invisible, it stops creating reflection. But the Qur'an constantly brings your attention back to it, not because Allah needs you to notice, but because you need to realize. Because once you begin to see the structure of creation, you begin to understand something deeper. This world was not created without purpose. It was not designed just to exist. It was created with meaning, with intention, and with a role that goes beyond what you immediately see. Now think about this carefully. If everything around you has been placed with such precision, such care, and such balance, then it cannot be meaningless. It cannot be random, because design always points to purpose. And when purpose exists, it leads to a question that cannot be ignored. Why was all of this created in the first place? Because understanding how the universe took shape is only part of the story. The deeper question is not just how it was created, but why it was created. And once you begin to ask that question, you move from observing the world to understanding your place within it. Once you begin to understand how the universe was created, how everything was placed with precision, balance, and order, a deeper question naturally begins to rise. Not just how, but why. Because creation without purpose does not align with what you have just seen. A system this precise, this structured, this intentional cannot exist without meaning behind it. And this is where many people stop too early. They look at the sky, the earth, the stars, and they feel a sense of wonder. But they do not go further. They admire creation, but they do not question its purpose. And without that question, something remains incomplete. Because understanding creation without understanding its purpose is like seeing a message but never reading it. The Qur'an does not leave this question unanswered. It makes it clear that Allah did not create the heavens and the earth in vain, not as a random act, not as something without direction, but with truth, with purpose, and with meaning. Every part of creation points beyond itself. It is not the destination. It is a sign. Now think about this carefully. Everything around you serves a function. The sun provides light and warmth. The earth supports life. The water sustains you. Even the systems within your own body operate with purpose. Nothing exists without a role. So how can the entire universe exist without one? This is where the contrast becomes powerful. On one side, there is the idea that life is random, that existence has no real purpose, that everything is just happening without reason. On the other side, there is the reality that everything is created with intention, that every detail points towards something greater, and that your existence is not an accident. And this is where it becomes personal, because you are not separate from this creation. You are part of it. You live within it, depend on it, and interact with it every moment. So if everything around you has purpose, then what about you? Are you the only exception, or are you also created for something beyond what you immediately see? The Qur'an brings this understanding directly to you. It reminds you that you were not created aimlessly. Your life is not just about existing, eating, working, and passing time. There is a reason you are here, a reason that goes beyond the surface of daily life. And when you begin to understand that, everything starts to change. Because purpose changes how you see everything. Struggles are no longer just problems, they become tests. Success is no longer just achievement, it becomes responsibility. Time is no longer something to pass, it becomes something to value. And life itself becomes something you are accountable for. But here is something many people find difficult to accept. Purpose also means accountability. If you were created for a reason, then your actions matter, your choices matter. The way you live your life is not meaningless. It is part of something larger. And this realization can feel heavy, but it is also what gives life its depth. Now reflect on your own life again. How often do you move through your day without thinking about why you are doing what you are doing? How often do you focus on temporary goals, temporary worries, temporary desires, without connecting them to something greater? This is how purpose becomes hidden, not because it is unclear, but because it is ignored. And yet the signs are always there, in the sky above you, in the earth beneath you, in the balance of everything around you. They are all pointing toward the same reality, that this world is not the end, that it is part of a larger plan, and that you have a role within it. So now the story of creation is no longer just about the universe, it becomes about you, about your existence, your purpose, and your direction, because once you understand why everything was created, you begin to ask a question that is even more important. What is your place in all of this? And how are you supposed to live within a creation that was designed with such meaning and precision? Because this is where everything comes together. Not in theory, not in knowledge alone, but in how you see yourself from this moment forward. Now that you have seen how everything began, how the universe was shaped, and why it was created, the focus returns to something much closer than the sky above you or the earth beneath your feet. It returns to you. Because in the middle of this vast creation, your existence is not random, not overlooked, and not without meaning. You are living in a world that was designed with precision, placed within a system that operates perfectly, and sustained by a power that never fails. Every breath you take, every step you walk, every moment you experience is happening within a creation that Allah controls completely. And yet, despite being surrounded by this reality, it is easy to forget what it actually means for you. Because when life becomes routine, awareness begins to fade. You wake up, follow your privichki, deal with your responsibilities, and move through your day without stopping to reflect on the bigger picture. The sky becomes just the sky. The earth becomes just the ground. Your life becomes just a series of events. And slowly the connection between you and the purpose of creation becomes weaker. But the truth has not changed. You are still part of something far greater than your daily routine. You were placed here intentionally, given life intentionally, and guided through signs that are meant to bring you back to that awareness. The problem is not that the signs are missing. The problem is that they are often ignored. Now think about this carefully. If Allah created the entire universe with such detail, such balance, and such control, then your existence within it cannot be meaningless. You are not here by accident. You are not here without direction. Your life has purpose, even if you have not fully understood it yet. And once you begin to accept that, everything starts to shift. Because purpose changes how you see yourself. You are no longer just reacting to life. You are living with intention. Your actions are no longer random. They carry weight. Your time is no longer something to waste. It becomes something valuable. And your relationship with Allah is no longer distant. It becomes central to everything you do. But here is where the contrast becomes even more important. This dunya, the world you live in, feels immediate, visible, and real. It demands your attention, pulls your focus, and fills your thoughts. But it is temporary. Every moment in it is passing. Every experience is leading toward an end. And beyond it is the akhirah, a reality that is eternal, unseen, and far more significant. So now ask yourself honestly, where is your focus? Is it only what you can see, touch, and experience right now? Or are you aware of what lies beyond it? Because the way you answer this question shapes everything about how you live your life. The story of creation is not just there to inform you, it is there to wake you up, to remind you that you are part of a system that has a beginning and an end. That your life is not isolated, but connected to something much larger, and that the choices you make are not meaningless, but part of your journey within this creation. And this is where reliance begins to take its place, because once you understand that everything is controlled by Allah, you stop trying to carry the weight of control on your own. You still act, you still plan, you still strive, but your heart is no longer attached to outcomes. It is attached to the one who decides them. This brings a kind of peace that nothing else can provide. Not because life becomes easy, but because your understanding becomes clear. You know where everything comes from. You know where everything is going. And you know that your role is not to control everything, but to live with awareness, sincerity, and purpose. So as you move forward from this moment, do not let this understanding remain just words. Let it become something you carry with you. When you look at the sky, remember its creation. When you stand on the earth, remember its purpose. And when you think about your life, remember that you are part of something far greater than what you see. Because in the end, the story of creation is not just about how the universe began. It is about how you choose to live within it. And once you truly understand that, your life is no longer just existence. It becomes a journey with meaning, direction, and a connection to the one who created it all.